Evelyn Boone pressed one trembling hand against her belly, and the other against the cold oak of her husband's study door, and she listened as the man she had married called her a mistake. She heard the woman beside him laugh. She heard the word adequate. She heard the word useful. And she heard the silence that followed the silence of a husband who would not defend his own wife. By dawn she was gone, and she carried with her the one thing he had never thought to ask about. If this story reaches you tonight, do me a kindness. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a single part. Stay with me all the way to the end, and drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments below. I want to see how far Evelyn's story travels. The Virginia night had thickened into something heavy and still, and Evelyn Boone had not meant to leave her room. She had only meant to fetch a glass of water. That was what she told herself as she moved barefoot down the long upstairs hall, her nightdress brushing the boards, one hand resting on her stomach, without her even knowing it was there. That was what she told herself when she saw the strip of yellow lamplight spilling from beneath the closed study door. That was what she told herself right up until she heard her own name. Evelyn, Caroline Whitmore said, and the word came out of that woman's mouth like something spoiled. Nathaniel, be honest with me. Be honest with yourself. Is she what you wanted? Evelyn stopped. Her hand left her belly. Her hand found the wall. She is my wife, came Nathaniel Boone's voice from inside, slow and tired. That is the answer to every question you are asking me tonight. That is not an answer. That is a title. Caroline. No, Nathaniel. I have watched you these 6 months. I have watched you sit across from her at your own table and find nothing to say. I have watched you ride out at first light so you would not have to take breakfast with her. I have watched her try, God help the girl, I have watched her try, and I have watched you look clean through her like she was a pane of window glass. That is not your business. It became my business the day you asked me to stay on at this house after the wedding. You brought me back into your life and you called it family courtesy. You called it my father's land. You called it the lawyers' meetings in Richmond. Don't you dare pretend now that it was only that. Evelyn's throat closed. She had not known Caroline had asked to stay. She had been told the Whitmore woman remained out of old arrangements, old business between the families, old debts of civility. Not this, not this. She is a good woman, Nathaniel said, and his voice had lowered, and Evelyn could hear the thing underneath it. Not love something weaker than love something closer to shame. She is a decent, God-fearing woman. She came to this house when her family had nothing, and she has not once complained, and she has not once adequate, Caroline said. Silence. That is the word you are reaching for, Nathaniel. Adequate, decent, suitable. She is suitable. Stop it. You know I am right. You married her because your mother's will required a wife beneath this roof within the year. You married her because the Harper name still carries weight up in Annapolis, and your landlines needed a Maryland connection. You married her because she was quiet, and she was raised well, and she would not embarrass you at dinner. Caroline, that is enough. You married her for use, Nathaniel. Say it. Just once in this room with the door closed, say it out loud. A long pause. Evelyn had stopped breathing. She was aware of that, the way a drowning woman is aware of water. She is, Nathaniel said, and his voice cracked in the middle of it. She is a good arrangement. The word struck her like a mule kick to the chest. Arrangement. There, Caroline said softly. That is the truth of it. And it did not kill you to say it did it. That does not mean, oh, I know what it does not mean. I am not a girl, Nathaniel. I know you have been a gentleman. I know you have not broken a single vow in the legal sense of the thing, but we are not speaking of law tonight. We are speaking of what you actually feel in your chest when she walks into a room, and what you feel is nothing. What you feel is the small, tired weight of a duty you have already completed. I did what was right. Yes, you did what was right, and it was a mistake. Evelyn's knees buckled. She caught herself against the wall. Don't say that, Nathaniel said. Say what mistake you know it is the word. You have known it for months. Caroline, she has done nothing to deserve. I did not say she had. I said marrying her was a mistake. Those are not the same sentence, and you are a grown man, and you know the difference. I will not discuss my wife with you in this house. Then where, Nathaniel? In what room, in what house on God's green earth will you ever discuss her honestly? Because that is the tragedy of it. Don't you see? You have arranged a life where you never have to look the truth in the face. You have her on one end of this great long hall, and me on the other, and you pass through the middle, and you call it duty, and you sleep alone, and you tell yourself you are a man of honor. I am. You are a coward. Evelyn made a sound she did not mean to make. It was nothing a breath a hitch, but in that hallway with her shoulder pressed against the wall and her ear half turned toward the crack of the door, it was enough to her own hearing to feel like a scream. She clapped her hand over her mouth. Inside the study, Nathaniel had gone very quiet. Did you hear something? He said. The house. Caroline answered, bored. This old house creaks all night long. You know that. I thought, Nathaniel, look at me. Look at me. You are not happy. You will never be happy. Not with her. She was chosen for you by a dead woman's will and a dry lawyer in Richmond. That is not a marriage. That is a contract with a prayer said over it. She is carrying herself well in the county. People speak kindly of her. People speak kindly of good horses and good china. That is not the measurement of a wife. Then what is? You know what it is. No, tell me, whether her husband wants to come home to her. And there it was. Evelyn stood in the hall, and her hand slid down from her mouth, and she laid it flat upon her belly again. And for the first time, she understood truly. Understood the way a woman understands a thing, when it stops being an idea and becomes a weight inside her body, that she had made a child with a man who did not want to come home to her. She was 4 weeks late. She had not told him. She had been waiting. She had been waiting for an evening when he might look up from his ledger and ask after her health. She had been waiting for a Sunday when he might reach for her hand in the pew the way she had seen other husbands do. She had been waiting for the next storm. There had been one storm. In the early spring, he had come to her door that night. He had said things she had wanted so badly to hear that she had believed every single one of them. And in the morning, he had left a note upon the washstand. Thank you, the note had said. Nothing more. She had saved that note. She was an idiot. She had saved it. Nathaniel, Caroline said very soft now. Send her home. I cannot send her home. The Harpers have no home any longer. Her father's estate was sold off last autumn. Then settle something on her. A small house. A decent allowance. A quiet annulment. People do it, you know, people who have done it. She is young. She will marry again. She will be grateful in the end. I will not humiliate her. You are humiliating her every day that she sits at that table and watches you not look at her. A chair scraped. Evelyn flinched. Caroline, Nathaniel said, and his voice had hardened. I will not discuss this further. Not tonight, not ever in this house. Then when, Nathaniel? When I have an answer. You have an answer. You are simply too decent to speak it and too dishonest to live by it. The whole thing with her was, don't. A mistake. Silence. He did not argue. He did not say no. He did not say, she is my wife, and you will not speak of her that way under my roof. He let the word sit in the room like a knife laid upon a table between them, and he did not pick it up and he did not put it away. Evelyn turned from the door. She walked. She did not run. Running would have made noise, and she had been trained since girlhood that a lady did not make noise in a house that did not belong to her. And this house she understood now in a way she had not understood. That morning had never belonged to her. She walked the length of the upstairs hall, and she did not cry. She opened the door to her own rooms, and she did not cry. She crossed to her dressing table, and she set both palms upon it, and she leaned her weight against the wood, and she looked at herself in the glass, and even then she did not cry. There would be time for crying. There would be years of it, most likely. But not in this house. Not with his name on the door. Not while that woman was still laughing at her downstairs. She lifted her head. Lord, she whispered, Forgive me what I am fixing to do, and protect the child." Then she moved. She took the plain gray traveling dress, the one she had brought with her from her mother's house, the one Nathaniel had once remarked looked like widow's cloth and ought to be handed down to the laundress. She had kept it. She had never known why until this very hour. She took her mother's Bible from the bedside table. She took the small leather purse with the coins her younger brother had pressed into her hand on her wedding morning, $9, and a Spanish silver piece, his whole savings, at 14 years of age, and she had promised him she would never spend it unless she was desperate. She was desperate. She took nothing else. Not the pearl earrings, not the garnet brooch, not the silver-backed hairbrush with the engraved B on the handle. Not the wedding ring on her finger. She slid that off and laid it on the dressing table, and she set it down with care, the way a woman sets down a thing that has bitten her. She was not going to be accused of stealing. Not by him. Not by Caroline. Not by that lawyer in Richmond. Not by the county. Let them say many things about Evelyn Boone in the years to come. Let them, never so long as she drew breath, be able to say she had taken so much as a ribbon that had been bought with Boone money. She dressed in the dark. She was pulling on her second stocking when the door creaked. Her heart stopped. "Ma'am?" It was Mrs. Ada Green. The housekeeper stood in the doorway in her nightdress with a shawl thrown across her shoulders and a tallow candle in her hand, and her gray hair was loose down her back, and her face lit from below. By that small flame was the face of a woman who had already understood everything. "Mrs. Green," Evelyn said, "you heard them." Evelyn did not answer. "I reckon someone would sooner or later. That Whitmore woman don't whisper. Please, Mrs. Green, go back to bed." "Child." "Please." Mrs. Green stepped inside. She shut the door behind her quietly. She set the candle down on the washstand. "Where will you go?" "I do not know yet." "You cannot just—" "I can." "Ma'am, it ain't even first light. The roads are—" "I know what the roads are." "You have no escort. You have no—" "Mrs. Green!" Evelyn turned from the dressing table, and she held the older woman's gaze, and her voice did not shake, and that surprised her more than anything that had happened in that house that night. "I have heard my husband call our marriage a mistake. I have heard another woman laugh at me in my own home. I have stood outside his study, and I have understood at last exactly what I am to him. I will not be here when the sun comes up. I will not sit across from him at breakfast and pour his coffee and ask after the hay. I will not do it. Do you hear me? I will not do it one more day. Ma'am, do not tell him." Mrs. Green's eyes filled. "Do not tell him where I went. Do not tell him which way I walked. Do not tell him what time I left. If he asks, tell him only this. Tell him Mrs. Boone heard every word he did not say. And tell him—" Her voice caught just once, and she pressed her knuckles hard against her mouth, and then she went on. "Tell him I took nothing of his. Not the jewelry, not the gowns, not even the name. He can have that back too in time." "Child," Mrs. Green whispered, "you are pale as paper. Are you?" Evelyn looked at her. The older woman looked back, and something in Mrs. Green's face shifted the way the face of a woman who has raised 4 babies and buried 2 of them shifts when she understands a thing without needing to be told. "Oh, Lord," Mrs. Green said softly. "Oh, child. Does he know?" "No." "Ma'am, you cannot carry a babe onto a road by yourself in the dark. I am not asking your permission, Mrs. Green. I am asking your silence." A long pause, and then the housekeeper did something Evelyn had not expected. She reached into the pocket of her nightdress, and she drew out a small folded square of cloth, and inside it were 3 silver dollars money that must have taken that woman a full year to set aside out of her wages, and she pressed them into Evelyn's palm and closed Evelyn's fingers over them tight. "You take the back stairs," Mrs. Green said. "You cross the kitchen yard. You go out past the smokehouse, not past the stables. The stable boys wake early. You head east, not toward town. You walk until you reach the crossroads at Miller's Branch, and then you wait for the mail coach. It comes through near sunup. You give the driver 2 bits, and you do not under any circumstance tell that man your real name. Mrs. Green! Go on now, before I lose my nerve and wake the master. Evelyn's eyes, which had not wept all that night, finally broke. She leaned forward. She pressed her forehead against the older woman's shoulder. She did not make a sound. Mrs. Green held her. Child, Mrs. Green murmured into her hair, a man who will not defend his wife inside his own study don't deserve to keep her. You remember that. You remember that every mile of every road you walk from this night forward. You hear me? Yes, ma'am? Say it. He does not deserve to keep me. Again. He does not deserve to keep me. One more time and mean it, child. Evelyn lifted her head. He does not deserve to keep me. Good. Mrs. Green nodded once sharp the way a woman nods who has made her peace with a hard thing. Now go. Evelyn went. She carried the gray dress folded over one arm, and her mother's Bible pressed against her chest, and the coins knotted in a scrap of cloth and tied inside her bodice, where no cut purse on any road would ever find them. She walked down the back stairs in the dark, and she did not stumble once. She crossed the kitchen. She lifted the latch on the yard door. It squeaked, and she froze, and no soul came running, and she stepped out into the warm Virginia summer night. The air smelled of honeysuckle and horses, and the river somewhere far beyond the western fields. She did not look back at the house. She had heard all her life that when a woman leaves a man, she must not look back, because if she looks back, she will weaken, and if she weakens, she will stay, and if she stays, she will die slow inside her own skin. She did not look back. She walked past the smokehouse the way Mrs. Green had told her. She walked past the kitchen garden with its rows of young beans just starting to climb their poles. She walked past the low stone wall at the edge of the lawn, and she stepped over it into the long grass of the east pasture, and she kept on walking. Her slippers were soaked clean through with dew before she reached the tree line. She did not stop. She laid her free hand once, just briefly, upon her belly. "It is only us now," she said aloud to the small, unknowing thing inside her. "It is only us, little one, and we are going to be all right. Do you hear me? You and me. We are going to be all right." She walked on into the dark, and in the study at the far end of Boone Hall, the lamp burned for another half hour before Nathaniel Boone rose from his desk, climbed the staircase, and passed his wife's door without knocking. The way he had passed it every night for 6 long months, not knowing, not yet, not for hours, that the door on the other side of that polished oak was no longer his to knock upon. The mail coach rattled through the Virginia countryside an hour after sunup, and Evelyn Boone sat pressed against the wooden wall of it, with her mother's Bible clutched in her lap, and her face turned toward the shuttered window so the other passengers would not see her eyes. There were 3 of them riding with her. A traveling preacher with a pinched mouth, a tobacco buyer from Lynchburg who smelled of pipe smoke and stale whiskey, a heavy-set farm wife with a basket of eggs on her knees who had not stopped talking since Culpeper. "You are awful quiet, honey," the farm wife said for the 3rd time. "You from around these parts?" "No, ma'am." "Where you bound?" "North." "North, where north is a mighty big country." "To my aunt's." "And where does your aunt live?" Evelyn kept her gaze on the shutter. "Maryland, ma'am." "Well, I been to Maryland." "Whereabouts in Maryland?" "Please." Evelyn's voice came out thinner than she had meant it to. "I am very tired. Forgive me." The farm wife sniffed and turned her attention to the preacher instead. Evelyn closed her eyes. She could feel the coins knotted against her ribs. She could feel the 3 silver dollars from Mrs. Green wrapped separately in a handkerchief and pinned inside her sleeve. She could feel beneath all of it the small secret weight low in her belly that no one on this coach could see, and no one on this earth knew about, except an old housekeeper she would likely never lay eyes on again. "Girl." She opened her eyes. The tobacco buyer was looking at her. "You got a ring mark on that finger." Evelyn looked down. There it was. A pale band on the 4th finger of her left hand, where the gold had sat for 6 months. She had not thought of it. She had not thought of 100 things she should have thought of. "My husband passed," she said. The lie came out of her mouth before she had decided to tell it, and once it was out, she felt the full, terrible weight of what she had done that night settle upon her for the first time. She had become a liar. She would be a liar now for every mile of the rest of her life. Every town she entered, every door she knocked upon, every neighbor who asked a friendly question. She would lie and lie and lie. And she would do it to protect the child. And she would never again be the girl her mother had raised to say grace at the table, with a clean conscience. "My condolences, ma'am," the tobacco buyer said. "Thank you." He tipped his hat and said nothing more the rest of the way. Back at Boone Hall, the first light came in gray, and then gold, and the house woke the way it always woke, with the cook stirring the kitchen fire, and the stable boys leading the horses out to the paddock, and Mrs. Ada Green carrying a tray of coffee up the main stairs with her chin held high and her hand not quite steady. She knocked at the master's door. "Come." Nathaniel Boone was already dressed. He stood at the window of his bedchamber with one hand on the sill and the other pressed flat against his breastbone, as though something there hurt him, and he did not know the name of it yet. "Your coffee, sir." "Set it on the desk." She set it on the desk. She did not leave. He turned and looked at her. "Was there something else, Mrs. Green?" "Mrs. Boone, sir." "What of her?" "She is not in her room, sir." A long pause. "She may be in the garden. She walks early some mornings." "Yes, sir. I thought the same. I went out and looked. She is not in the garden." "The chapel, then?" "I checked the chapel." "The kitchen?" "I checked the kitchen." He set down the cup he had not yet lifted to his mouth. "Then where is she, Mrs. Green?" "I do not know, sir." He looked at her. She looked at the floor. He had known this woman since he was 9 years old. She had pressed cold cloths to his forehead when he had scarlet fever in the autumn of his 12th year. She had stood behind his mother's chair at every Christmas dinner he could remember. He knew every tell she had, and she was showing 3 of them at once, the set of her jaw, the 2 fingers pressed flat against her apron seam, the way her eyes would not come up off the floorboards. "Mrs. Green." "Sir?" "Look at me." She looked at him. "Where is my wife?" "I do not know, sir." "Mrs. Green?" "I do not know where she is, sir. That is the Lord's honest truth. I do not know which road, and I do not know which town, and I could not tell you if you laid hot iron to my hand. I do not know." "But you know that she is gone." Silence. "You know that she has left." Silence. "Mrs. Green?" "Yes, sir. I know she is gone." He sat down. He sat down the way a man sits down when his knee has given out from under him, and he has only just remembered that there is a chair behind him. "When?" "Before first light." "How?" "Walking, sir." "Walking where?" "I do not know, sir." "Mrs. Green, so help me." "Sir?" Her voice was shaking now, but her eyes had finally come up, and they were harder than he had ever seen them. "You can dismiss me this morning if you please. You can turn me out without a reference, and I will walk to my sister's in Lexington, and I will go with a clean conscience. But I will not tell you a thing I do not know, and I will not tell you a thing I do know, if that thing was told to me in trust by the mistress of this house. That woman was my mistress, sir. That woman trusted me. And I will go to my grave before I break the trust of a woman who has been broken enough already under this roof." He stared at her. "Broken," he said. "Yes, sir." "You will explain that word." "No, sir, I will not." "Mrs. Green." "Sir, if you want that word explained, you will walk down this hall to your study, and you will sit in the chair you sat in last night, and you will think real careful about every word that came out of your mouth and every word that did not. And then you will have your answer, and you will not need it from me." A silence so heavy the clock on the mantel seemed to stop. She heard. Mrs. Green did not answer. She heard Miss Whitmore. Mrs. Green did not answer. "Oh, God in heaven!" He put his face in his hands. Mrs. Green picked up the coffee tray he had not touched. She carried it toward the door. She paused there with her hand on the frame, and she did not turn around, but she spoke in a voice so low he almost missed it. "There is one other thing, sir, that I will say because she did not forbid me to say it, and because I believe in my soul you have a right to know it, even though you have not earned it. Say it." "She took nothing of yours." He lifted his head. "Not the pearls, not the brooches, not the gowns, not so much as a hair ribbon out of her own wardrobe that was bought with Boone money. Her ring is on the dressing table, sir. She did not want it said, not in Richmond, not in the county, not ever anywhere, that she had taken one thing from you she had not brought through your door herself. Mrs. Green. She took the gray dress her mother made her. She took her mother's Bible. She took the wedding money her little brother gave her. That is all she took from this house, sir. That and whatever else she happened to be carrying." The last words hung strange in the room. "What do you mean by that?" he said. "Whatever else she happened to be carrying." Mrs. Green turned the knob. "Mrs. Green." "Good morning, sir." "Mrs. Green, answer me." But she was already out of the room, and the door was already closing, and she did not look back. He sat a long time at that desk. He did not drink the coffee. He did not ring for more. He did not call for the overseer or the stable master or any of the half-dozen men who reported to him each morning at this hour. He sat and he stared at the grain of the wood in front of him. And after a while, he stood up and he walked slowly down the long hall to his wife's rooms. The door was shut. He put his hand on the knob, and then he took it off. He had never in 6 months entered her rooms without knocking. He knocked now. He knocked on the door of a woman who had already been gone 3 hours. There was no answer, of course. He opened the door. The room was as it always was, because she had always kept it that way. The counterpane smoothed the curtains, drawn back the washbasin clean. The only thing out of its ordinary place was a small gold band on the dressing table, set neatly in the center of the glass tray where she laid her hairpins each night. He crossed the room. He picked up the ring. It was warm. Not warm from her finger, it had been cold in that room for hours now, but warm from the shaft of morning sun coming through the east window and falling directly upon the tray. He held it in his palm, and he turned it over once, and he saw the letters inside the band. N.B. to E.H. June, 1815. He had chosen that inscription. He had stood in the jeweler's shop in Richmond, and he had written those initials on a slip of paper, and handed it across the counter, and he had paid what the man had asked, and ridden home with the ring in his pocket. And he had not once, not even for the span of a single breath, considered that he was buying a thing a woman might someday lay down upon a dressing table and walk away from. He closed his hand around it. He went back out into the hall, and he nearly walked straight into Caroline Whitmore. She was dressed. She was composed. Her hair was already pinned, and there was already a touch of color set high on her cheek that had not been there the night before. "Nathaniel," she said, "you look unwell. Have you slept at all?" He did not answer her. "I was just coming to ask Mrs. Boone if she would care to ride out with me this morning. The south pastures are pretty in this kind of light, and I thought, she is not here. Not here, is she in the garden? She is gone." Caroline's face did not move. She did not blink. She did not start. She did not bring her hand to her throat, the way a woman brings her hand to her throat when she has been struck by surprising news. She held her expression for 1 full second, and then another, and then she arranged upon it exactly the correct amount of concern. "Gone? Gone where?" He looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. "You knew," he said quietly. "I beg your pardon. You knew she was listening last night." "Nathaniel, what on earth?" "You knew there was someone in the hall." "I did not. I asked you, Caroline. I asked you if I had heard something, and you told me it was the house." "Because it was the house. Nathaniel, listen to yourself. You are not thinking clearly. You are— Get out. I beg your pardon. Get out of my house. Nathaniel, today, before noon, I will have the carriage brought around and your things sent after. I will settle whatever lawyer's nonsense your father has cooked up between our families in writing, and I will do it generously, and I will do it quick, and I will never again, so long as I draw breath, find you under this roof before sundown. Do you understand me?" Her face finally moved. Not with hurt, with calculation. "You are in a state, Nathaniel. You will regret every word you are speaking to me now by supper. A wife runs. That is what young wives do. They run, and they sulk at a cousin's house for 3 days, and they come back and husbands forgive them, and everyone is very quiet about it. That is the whole of what is happening here. She will be back by Thursday. You will see. She will not be back. Of course she will. Where is she to go, Nathaniel? Her father is in a pauper's grave. Her mother is living on your allowance. Her brother is 14 years old, and in a boarding school you pay the fees for. She will come home because there is nowhere in God's creation for that girl to go but home. He looked at her, and for the first time in 6 months, he saw her clean through the way Evelyn must have been seeing her for weeks, the way Mrs. Green had been seeing her all along. You do not know her, he said. I know women of her station. No, Caroline, you know women of your station. You have never in your life known one single woman of hers. Nathaniel, out. She went. She went because there was nothing else to do, and because the tone of his voice had become something she had not heard from him before, and because for all her calculation she understood at last that she had lost the long game she had been playing in this house since Christmas. He stood in the hall a long time after her skirts had gone around the corner. Then he walked back into his wife's empty room, and he sat down on the edge of her bed. A bed he had not sat upon since the one storm night in early spring, and he bent forward with his elbows on his knees and his hands in his hair, and he stayed like that until the sun had climbed another full hour up the sky. "Evelyn," he said to the empty room. The room did not answer him. By that same hour, 60 miles to the north, Evelyn Boone stepped down from a mail coach in a town she had never seen before in her life. She did not know the name of it. She had not asked. She had ridden as far as Mrs. Green's $3 silver, and her brother's 9 would carry her, and she had gotten off when the driver had called the last stop on his route, and she stood now in the dust of a street she did not know, with her Bible in one hand, and the gray dress folded over her other arm, and the sun high and hot overhead. She did not cry. She had for a moment in the coach thought she might. But the tobacco buyer had been watching her, and the farm wife had been asking questions, and she had learned in one single night a thing. It takes most women half a lifetime to learn that grief in front of strangers is a currency a woman cannot afford to spend. She looked up and down the street. There was a livery stable. There was a general store with a faded sign. There was a boarding house with lace curtains in the front window. There was a small white clapboard church at the far end with a modest steeple and a graveyard fenced behind it. There was also on the porch of the boarding house a woman in a gray widow's dress sweeping dust off the boards with a straw broom. The woman paused in her sweeping. She watched Evelyn a moment. She took in the quiet measuring way of a woman who has seen more than her share of young women step off coaches alone. The bare finger, the dust on the hem, the Bible, the folded dress, the face that was holding itself together only because there was no other option left. "Girl," the woman called across the street. "You lost?" Evelyn opened her mouth. She could not make a sound come out. "You got somewhere to be." Evelyn shook her head. "You got kin." Evelyn shook her head. "You got a name." A long pause. "Evelyn," she said. "Evelyn what?" And the young woman standing in the dust of that unknown street, 23 years old, and 4 weeks late, and one morning gone from a marriage that had never been a marriage, lifted her chin and spoke a name she had not spoken aloud since her wedding day. Evelyn Harper. Not Boone. Harper. Her mother's maiden name and her own, before a dry lawyer in Richmond had handed her a pen and a new life she had not asked for. The widow on the porch leaned her broom against the railing. "Well, Miss Harper," she said, "I am Martha Hale, and this is my boarding house, and supper is at 6, and I charge $1.25 a week for a room with a window and $1 flat for one without. Which will it be?" "The one without, ma'am." "Got $1. "Yes, ma'am." "Come on, then." Evelyn crossed the street. She climbed the 3 wooden steps of the porch. She stopped just short of the door. "Mrs. Hale." "Yes, honey." "I have to tell you something before I take that room." "All right." "I am not a widow." Martha Hale looked at her a long moment. "No, honey," she said quietly. I did not figure you were. I will work. I will sew. I will cook. I will scrub floors. I will do whatever you ask of me. But I cannot tell you the whole of my story, not today, maybe not ever, and I will understand if that is a thing you cannot abide in your house. Child. Ma'am, I have been keeping this boarding house 21 years, and in 21 years I have not once asked a woman in trouble the whole of her story. I ask her name, and I ask her rent, and I ask her if she can eat pork, and that has always been enough for me. Come inside. The sun is fierce out here, and you look like you have not sat down in a house all morning. Evelyn stepped through the door, and somewhere on the road 60 miles south of her Nathaniel Boone was already in the saddle of his fastest horse, riding hard for Richmond, where a lawyer he had known since boyhood would open his office at 10 sharp, and where the first of many long and useless searches for a woman who had taken nothing and told no one would begin before the bells struck noon. The lawyer's office in Richmond smelled of old paper and pipe ash, and Nathaniel Boone stood in front of the desk with his hat in his hand and his jaw set hard enough to crack a walnut. She is gone, Jonas. Gone where, Nathaniel? If I knew that I would not be standing in your office at 10 o'clock in the morning. Jonas Merriweather, 61 years old, and Nathaniel's father's oldest friend, before that good man had died, set down his pen and looked up slowly. Sit down, son. I will not sit. Nathaniel, sit down. Nathaniel sat. Now tell me again, from the beginning. What has happened? My wife is missing. She left the house before dawn. She took nothing. She told no one. The housekeeper knows which way she walked and will not say. Mrs. Green has worked for your family 30 years. I am aware. And she will not say. She will not. Jonas leaned back in his chair. Then, son, that tells you the answer to the question you came here to ask me without even knowing you had come to ask it. Which question? Whether she meant to come back. Nathaniel said nothing. A woman who tells the housekeeper and swears her to silence is a woman who means it, Nathaniel. She is not at a cousin's house pouting. She is not going to be back by Thursday. You understand me? I understand. Why did she leave? That is not the matter I came here to discuss. Son, Jonas leaned forward. I have drawn up the wills of 3 generations of Boones. I sat with your mother the week before she passed and held her hand while she signed. I am not your lawyer today. I am your father's friend. Why did she leave? A long silence. She overheard me, Nathaniel said. Overheard you what? Speaking of our marriage. With Miss Whitmore. Speaking of it how? Jonas. Speaking of it how, Nathaniel? Poorly. Jonas closed his eyes a moment. When he opened them, his face had gone flat as a board. I told your father on his deathbed I would look out for you. I told him I would give you an honest word when no man else would. I am going to give you one now. Give it then. You are a damned fool. I know. I am not finished. You are a damned fool. Nathaniel Boone and your father, God rest him, would have horsewhipped you in the yard for what you have done. You married a decent young woman from a ruined family. You brought her into your house, and you let another woman, a woman with nothing but appetite and politics in her heart, speak of that girl like she was livestock. Inside your own walls, where a God-fearing wife could hear you. I know, Jonas. You do not know. A man who knew would not have let that conversation run past its first sentence. A man who knew would have walked that Whitmore woman to the door himself and set her on the road to her father's house before the hall clock struck the hour. You did not do that, did you? No, sir. Then you do not yet know a thing, and I will not sit here and pretend with you that you do. Nathaniel looked down at the hat in his hands. The brim was crushed where he had been squeezing it. He did not remember doing that. Help me find her, Jonas. I will help you find her. I will help you find her, because that girl, wherever she is this morning, is a Boone by law and is entitled to the protection of Boone money and the Boone name, whether you ever lay eyes upon her again or not. That is the help I will give you, not 1 ounce more. That is all I am asking. Good. Now tell me every road that runs off your property. He told him. 60 miles to the north, Evelyn Harper. She had already begun, in her own mind, to think of herself by that name again. The way a woman learning to ride again finds her old seat without thinking, sat at Martha Hale's kitchen table, and helped a 7-year-old girl with the knots in a ball of gray wool. Like this child, see over under, pull slow. Pull too hard, and you tighten what you are trying to loose. Miss Harper. Yes, May. Are you going to live here now? Evelyn's hands went still on the wool. For a spell, I expect. Mama says you got sad eyes. Does she? She said don't ask you why. Then we will not talk of it. Miss Harper. Yes, May. I think you got pretty eyes, sad or not. Evelyn's throat closed. She had not cried yet. Not in the coach, not on the porch, not the night before in her own bedroom, while she folded her mother's Bible into her arms. But a child with a wool ball and a crooked front tooth, and a mother who had told her not to ask why, that nearly did it. She pulled the wool through another loop, and she willed her eyes dry, and she kept working. Go on now, Martha Hale said from the stove. Set the table for 6 May. Miss Harper has sewing to be done before the sun sets, and you are in the way of her. Yes, Mama. The child slid down from the bench and scampered off. Martha Hale did not look up from her pot. She likes you already. She is a good girl. She is a loud girl who asks too many questions, but she is mine. A pause. You got children, Miss Harper? The question came soft and sudden, the way a careful woman tests ice on a pond. Evelyn set down the wool. She looked at Martha Hale's back, at the gray streak in her hair, at the worn seam of her dress, at the straight, unjudging set of her shoulders, and she made in that instant the second hardest decision of her life. I will have one. Martha Hale's wooden spoon stopped moving. She did not turn around. When honey? Winter, I believe. Is the father. He is not coming for me. Does he know? No, ma'am. Is he a bad man? A long silence. He is not a bad man, Mrs. Hale. He is a weak man. And I have learned in the last day of my life that there is a difference. And the difference does not matter very much when you are the woman who has to sleep under his roof. Martha Hale set down the spoon. She crossed the kitchen. She sat down at the table across from Evelyn, and she took Evelyn's hand in her own, work-roughened hand, and held it, and she did not say a word for a long time. I will not put you out, she said at last. I did not ask. I know you did not. I am telling you the thing you did not ask. You have a room here until the child is born. You have a room here after if you want it. You will work, and you will pay what you can pay, and when you cannot pay, you will owe me nothing, because I buried a baby girl in that churchyard at the end of the street in the autumn of 1809, and I will not, so long as I draw breath, turn away a woman carrying a child she means to keep. Evelyn's eyes filled. Now do not cry on that wool, Martha Hale said, or we will be all afternoon picking it dry. Evelyn laughed. It came out broken and small, and it was the first sound like a laugh she had made in 36 hours. And once it was out of her, she laid her forehead down on her free hand, and her shoulders shook, and Martha Hale held her other hand across the table, and did not say a word, and somewhere out in the yard, May was singing a hymn off-key to a chicken. That evening back at Boone Hall, Nathaniel Boone returned home on a lathered horse, and found Caroline Whitmore's trunks still standing in the front hall. Mrs. Green. Sir? I gave an instruction this morning. Yes, sir. The instruction was that Miss Whitmore and her belongings would be off this property before noon. Yes, sir. It is near dusk, Mrs. Green. Yes, sir, it is. Then where is she? In the east parlor, sir, taking tea. He stared at her. Taking tea. Yes, sir. She informed me she would not be leaving until she had spoken with you again, and she informed the kitchen she would take her supper here, and she informed the stable boy that her horses were not to be harnessed without her personal order. Mrs. Green. Sir, go to the stable. Tell Silas to harness her carriage. Tell him that if Miss Whitmore's driver objects, he is to tell that driver the order comes from the master of this house and the driver may accept it, or he may find another position by morning. Then come and tell me when it is done, and not 1 minute before. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mrs. Green. Sir. I have not said thank you to you in some time, have I? No, sir. I mean it. I hear you, sir. She went. He walked the length of the main hall, and he opened the double doors of the east parlor, and Caroline Whitmore was indeed seated on the small rose settee, with a teacup in her hand, and a plate of shortbread on the low table before her, and an expression on her face that had clearly been rehearsed in a glass upstairs for the better part of an hour. Nathaniel. Caroline, sit with me. I will not. Nathaniel, please, be reasonable. I have waited all day only so that we might speak like civilized people once the heat had gone out of you. The heat has not gone out of me, Caroline. Come now. You have ridden all the way to Richmond and back. You have not eaten. You have not slept. You are in no state to make decisions that will, Caroline, affect your entire life. Caroline. Yes, Nathaniel. I am going to ask you one question. I am going to ask it one time. I want you to understand that your answer will determine whether I ever speak your name again inside this county or any other. A small flicker at the corner of her mouth. Not fear, interest. Ask. Did you know she was listening? Nathaniel, did you know my wife was standing in the hall outside that study door last night? I did not, Caroline. Do not lie to me. Not now. Not tonight. There is one true sentence owed in this room, and you are going to be the one who speaks it. A long silence. She set down her teacup. She looked up at him, and the mask she had been wearing all day slipped at last, and underneath it there was a small, hard, perfectly calm face that he had never until this moment seen clean. Yes, she said. Yes, you knew. I knew. I heard the floorboard, the third one from the master's door. It creaks. It has always creaked. I heard it the instant she stepped on it, and I knew she was in the hall, and I kept speaking, and I chose my words carefully, and I made certain every one of them landed. Why? Because she was never going to leave you on her own, Nathaniel. She was too well-bred and too devout and too grateful. She would have stayed in this house for 40 years and gone gray in the face and never once raised her voice, and you would have sat beside her at 1,000 dinners, wishing to God you had been brave enough to do the thing you could not do. So I did it for you, and now it is done. He could not speak. He could not for a full count of 10 draw a breath deep enough to make a word. You did it, he said finally, for me. I did it for us. There is no us, Caroline. Nathaniel, there has never been an us. There will never be an us. I want you to understand that before you cross that threshold tonight, because I will not say it again. Not in a letter, not through a friend, not in any drawing room in Virginia. There is no us. There is a woman in this world I have made a wife, and then I have failed, and then I have driven out of her own home, and whether I ever find her again or not, whether she ever forgives me or not, whether she is 10 miles from here, or 100 or 1,000, there will never be any room in my life for the woman who stood in that study and used my cowardice as a weapon. You are not being reasonable. I am being, Caroline, the first honest thing I have been in 6 months. Now get up. Get up out of that seat and walk to your carriage, and do not come back to this house, nor to this county, nor to any place where I might see your face, because if I see it, I swear to God, I will not be responsible for what a ruined man does. She stood. She stood slowly, and she smoothed her skirt, and she lifted her chin, and she walked to the door of the parlor, and at the door she paused, and she turned. She will not take you back, Nathaniel. I know. You know that, and still. Then you really have lost your mind. No, Caroline. For the first time in a long while I have found it. Good evening. She went. He heard a long while later the carriage wheels on the drive and the horses' hooves fading down the lane, and he stood in the east parlor alone with a cold teacup and a plate of untouched shortbread, and he understood in a slow, terrible way that he was alone in a house of 18 rooms, and that he had made it so himself. That same evening, in a town neither of them had yet named to the other, Evelyn Harper washed out her one gray dress in a tin basin in the yard behind Martha Hale's boarding house, wrung it by hand, and hung it on the line. A woman called across the fence. Miss Harper. Yes, ma'am. Martha says you can let her. I can, ma'am. My Thomas is up at the farm all week, and I got a letter come from my sister in Baltimore, and I cannot read a word of it. Would you read it to me for a penny? Yes, ma'am, but I will not take the penny. Take it, honey. I pay my debts. Evelyn took it. That was the first penny she earned in that town. Before the week was out, she had earned 11 more. She read letters for 3 different women. She sewed a hem for the blacksmith's wife. She copied out a page of church records for the old preacher whose hands had begun to shake. She did not haggle. She took what was offered, and she thanked each one of them by name, and she walked home to Martha Hale's boarding house each evening with a few coins knotted into the corner of her handkerchief. She did not think of Nathaniel Boone. That was what she told herself. She did not think of him when she lit the lamp at sundown. She did not think of him when she said her prayers. She did not think of him when she laid her hand upon her belly, which had begun very faintly, only she would have known it to round. She did not think of him when May asked her one night over the supper table whether Miss Harper had ever had a sweetheart, and she said, "No, child, I did not." And May said, "Well, you could get one now if you wanted, because Mr. Fletcher down at the livery says you got the prettiest handwriting in the county." She did not think of him. She did not. And at night, when she thought of him anyway, she pressed her face into the rough pillow Martha Hale had sewn for her, and she whispered under her breath, "He does not deserve to keep me the way Mrs. Green had taught her to whisper it, 3 and 4 and 5 times, until the words were louder than the other words in her head. The word adequate, the word arrangement, the word mistake, and most of all the word sufficient, which had not actually been spoken that night in the study, but which she had begun, God help her, to hear in her own voice in the dark. 10 days passed this way, then 14, then 20. On the 22nd day she was returning from the general store with a 1/4 pound of sugar wrapped in brown paper when a man on a bay horse rode slowly up the main street of the town, and he reined in, and he looked down at her from the saddle, and he took off his hat. He was not Nathaniel Boone. He was worse. "Mrs. Boone," he said. Her hand went cold around the paper of sugar. "I believe you are mistaken, sir." "No, ma'am, I do not believe I am." He dismounted. He was a lean man, 50 perhaps, with a pale and careful face and eyes the color of river silt. He held the reins of the bay in one gloved hand, and in the other hand he held a folded square of paper with a wax seal upon it. "My name is Silas Pritchard, ma'am. I am an attorney of sorts. I represent certain interests of your late father's estate, certain interests which I regret to inform you have recently come to light. My father's estate was settled, sir." "Indeed, ma'am, settled in the broad, unsettled in the particular. There remain outstanding obligations which under Maryland law fall to his heirs upon his passing, and as his eldest surviving child. I do not have this conversation in the street, sir." "Quite right. Quite right. Is there a private place where—" "There is not. Mrs. Boone, Miss Harper. As you prefer, ma'am, as you prefer." "Let me come directly to the point then, since we are standing in the open air. There is a matter of some $1,100 owing to certain creditors of your late father's. These creditors have instructed me to collect, and I have been authorized to accept payment in full, or in the alternative to accept a reasonable arrangement." A small dry smile. "Or perhaps, if it is more convenient to speak with your husband about the matter. Mr. Nathaniel Boone of Boone Hall, I believe, a gentleman of considerable means." Her hand was shaking now. She tightened it on the sugar. "You will not speak to him." "I am afraid, ma'am, that a married woman's debts are under the common law her husband's debts." "You will not speak to him, sir? Then, ma'am, I do hope you have $1,100 about your person." She stared up at him. He smiled down at her, a thin, patient smile, the smile of a man who had done this 100 times, and had never once not gotten what he came for. And he unfolded the square of paper in his hand, and he held it out to her, and her father's signature was on it, and her father had been in his grave 18 months, and she understood in a single cold instant that her quiet town, her small room, her penny at a time from neighbors with letters, all of it had just been found. And she understood one beat after that something worse. He would go to Boone Hall. He would ride south, and he would knock at the great front door, and he would ask for Mr. Nathaniel Boone by name, and he would lay this paper on that desk in that study, where she had heard the word arrangement, and everything she had given up to keep her dignity out of that man's hands would be undone in the space of a single afternoon. Unless she stopped it. "Sir," she said, and her voice did not shake, though her hand did. "Come with me to the boarding house. We will have our conversation indoors. But understand one thing before we take another step together. Ma'am, you will not write to my husband. You will not ride to his door. You will not send word, nor hint, nor letter, nor any man in your employ. That road is closed. Whatever is owed of my father's, I will answer for. Not him. Me. Are we clear?" Silas Pritchard tipped his hat. "We are clear, Miss Harper," he said softly, and the way he said it made her stomach turn for now. Martha Hale did not like the look of him from the moment he crossed her threshold. She had opened the door with flour up to her elbows and a rolling pin still in one hand, and she had taken one good slow look at Silas Pritchard in the entry of her boarding house, and she had come to her conclusion about him in about the same time it takes a woman to decide whether a melon is ripe. "Miss Harper," she said, not taking her eyes off the man, "is this gentleman expected?" "He is not expected, Mrs. Hale. But he is here on a matter of my father's." "Your father, honey?" "Yes, ma'am. My father's old business." Martha Hale set the rolling pin down on the sideboard, the way a woman sets down a weapon she wants a stranger to notice. "Then the gentleman is welcome to sit in the front parlor, and the door will stay open, and I will be in the kitchen just across the hall. And if your voice rises above a soft talking voice, Miss Harper, I will come directly and inquire as to why." "Yes, ma'am." "Sir." She looked straight at Pritchard. "Are we understood?" "Perfectly, madam." "Then go on in." Evelyn led him into the small front parlor. She did not sit. Neither did he. He laid the folded paper on the tea table between them, and he smoothed it with two pale fingers, the way a man smooths a playing card. "He is certain will win. Miss Harper, I will be plain. Your father died owing $1,132 to a gentleman in Annapolis. That gentleman has since passed on himself, and the note has come to me by way of purchase. I own it now. It is legally speaking mine to collect. My father's estate was sold." "Yes, ma'am." "And the proceeds of that sale paid perhaps half of what he owed across the county. This particular obligation was regrettably not among those honored." "Then it is not a debt of mine." "Ma'am, on that point, I am afraid the law differs with you. Sir, I am a woman who left her husband's home 3 weeks ago with $4 and my mother's Bible. I do not have $1,132. I will not have $1,132 come Christmas, nor next Christmas, nor any Christmas in a life I can presently imagine." "I am aware, ma'am." "Then what is it you want of me?" He smiled. It was the smile that made her understand in a way no word he had yet spoken had made her understand that she was in real trouble. "Miss Harper, I am a reasonable man. I have reviewed this note carefully, and I have considered your circumstances sympathetically. I have no wish to distress a young widow in a delicate season of her life." A pause. His eyes flicked very briefly to her waist. Her hand moved without her permission to cover her belly. "I am not a widow, sir. No, quite. Forgive me. A young wife in a delicate season of her life. A young wife whose husband, whom I am given to understand you have not informed of your present address, would I am equally certain settle this small matter for you by letter over breakfast, without so much as finishing his coffee. You will not write to him." "I would prefer not to, ma'am." "You will not. Miss Harper, a fresh proposal then. Since the money is not presently convenient to you, and since the involvement of your husband is not presently convenient to you either, perhaps we might settle this thing between ourselves. I am a man of some property. I travel. I have houses. A young woman of your refinement placed under my protection until such time as—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not get to finish the sentence. Evelyn Harper had, in the moment between one breath and the next, understood exactly what he was, and she had walked 3 steps to the sideboard, and she had picked up the small brass candlestick that stood there, and she had turned back around holding it by its base the way a woman holds a hammer. "Get out. Miss Harper, get out of this house. You have not heard the remainder of my—" I have heard it, sir. I have heard every word you did not yet say, and I have heard every word you meant by the words you did say. And I will tell you something now that my husband never told anyone about me, and that you will, God willing, be the last man on this earth who ever forgets. I am not for purchase, not by a debt, not by a title, not by a roof over my head. Now get out of this parlor before I call the woman across this hall, and I promise you she keeps a worse temper and a heavier hand than I do. Young woman, Mrs. Hale. Martha Hale was in the doorway before the echo died, and she was not holding the rolling pin. This time she was holding the heavy iron poker from the kitchen hearth, and the flour was still on her forearms, and her eyes were not kind. Is the gentleman leaving Miss Harper? He is Mrs. Hale. Good, sir. The door is this way, and you will not set foot on this porch again so long as I own the deed to it. Am I plain? Madam, you are interfering in a matter of law. I am interfering, sir, in a matter of my house. Out. He went. But at the door he turned, and he put his hat back on his head, and he looked at Evelyn across that small, clean entry with an expression that no longer pretended at courtesy. Miss Harper, I will give you 7 days. You will give me nothing. 7 days, ma'am, to consider. After that, the note goes south, to Virginia, to a certain great house outside of Richmond, to a certain gentleman who I am confident will settle this matter in cash before the ink of my letter has dried, and who will in the process be informed of the precise town in which his missing wife has chosen to make her refuge. A small, polite tip of the hat. 7 days. Good afternoon, ladies. The door shut behind him. Evelyn stood holding the brass candlestick for another full count of 10, before she understood that her hand had gone numb around it. Martha Hale took it from her gently and set it back on the sideboard. Honey. Mrs. Hale, sit down. I cannot sit. Sit, Evelyn. She sat. Martha Hale sat across from her and took both of her hands in both of her own. Now listen to me. I do not know the whole of what went on in that Virginia house. I did not ask. I do not need to. But I am going to ask you a plain question now, and I need a plain answer. Do you want that husband of yours to know where you are? No, ma'am. At all. Ever. I did not say ever. I said not like this. Not dragged to me by a man with a debt in his pocket and a leer on his mouth. Not summoned like a wayward girl. Not found. If he ever learns where I am, it will be because he has earned the knowing and not 1 hour before. Then, honey, you have 7 days to make certain that little rat in the silk hat does not write a single letter south of this town. How? Martha Hale was quiet a long moment. We are going to need help. Mrs. Hale, I cannot involve. Not his help. You listen to me, child. You are carrying a baby. You have no money. You have a debt collector who has just named his price, and it is not money he wants. You cannot by yourself in 7 days in a town where you are still a stranger fix this thing. You are going to need a friend with a name on him. I do not have one. You do. You just have not met him yet. Tomorrow morning, you are going to put on that gray dress, and you are going to walk with me to the house of Judge Winslow, and we are going to pay a call. Judge Winslow. He was my husband's closest friend on this earth. He buried my Tom with his own 2 hands when there was no preacher to be had, and he is the only man within 50 miles who has read the Maryland debt statutes with his eyes and not just heard them recited by another man who had read them for him. If anything can be done, Judge Winslow will know it, and if nothing can be done, he will tell us that too, and we will plan on from there. Mrs. Hale, I cannot drag a judge of the county into— You are not dragging him anywhere. I am. And I have buried a husband and a baby, and I have been dragging that man into other people's troubles for 21 years. 1 more day will not kill him. Evelyn began to cry. She cried the way she had not cried the night she left Boone Hall, nor in the coach, nor on Martha Hale's porch, nor any day since openly ugly, her shoulders heaving, her nose running her whole body, letting go at last of a thing it had been holding since before she had words for it. Martha Hale did not tell her to stop. Martha Hale reached into the pocket of her apron and handed her a clean folded handkerchief and sat with her and waited. 2 days later, and 60 miles south, Mrs. Ada Green was carrying a tray of bread and cold meat up the stairs to a man who had not come out of his own library in 48 hours. She set the tray on the table by the door. "Sir?" He did not look up. He was seated at the great mahogany desk with a map of the eastern seaboard spread before him, and a pen in his hand that had not moved in some time. His hair had not been combed. His shirt had not been changed. He had taken no dinner the night before, and he had taken nothing but coffee the morning before that, and Mrs. Green had begun in the last day to worry about him in a way she had not worried about him since the fever of his 12th year. "Sir, you have not eaten." "I have eaten. Yesterday's bread is still on yesterday's tray, sir." A pause. Then quietly, "Thank you, Mrs. Green." "Sir." He set down the pen. "Mrs. Green, come in and close the door." "Sir." "Please." She came in. She closed the door. He did not look at her. He looked at the map. "I have written letters," he said. "Yes, sir. 17 of them. To every town along the Baltimore Road. To 3 cities in Pennsylvania. To a cousin of my mother's in Charleston. To the 2 aunts of hers I ever heard mention of. I have asked in language careful enough that no gossip will be set running whether a young woman answering a particular description has been seen." "Yes, sir." 5 answers have come back. All 5 say no. "Sir?" "I am running out of roads, Mrs. Green." "Yes, sir. I imagine you are." A silence. "Mrs. Green?" "Sir?" "I will not ask you again. I swear before God I will not. But I am going to tell you one thing, and then I am going to ask you a thing I have not yet asked, and if you answer me no, I will not speak another word on the matter." "Go on, sir." "I understand now. I did not understand 3 weeks ago. I did not understand the first week. I will be honest with you, the first week I thought she was at a cousin's house and would be back on Sunday, and I was angry. She had frightened me. The second week I understood she was not coming back, and I was angry for a different reason. The third week—" He stopped. "Sir, the third week I went into her rooms, Mrs. Green. I sat on the edge of her bed. I opened the drawer of her dressing table, and I found the note I wrote her, the one I left on her washstand the morning after the storm in April. Thank you, nothing more." Mrs. Green's mouth tightened. "I wrote her thank you," he said. "After what happened between us, after she trusted me, I wrote her thank you like she was a serving girl who had brought me my boots. And she kept it, Mrs. Green. She kept that piece of paper. She folded it up and she kept it in the drawer of her dressing table for 4 months. And when she left this house, she took her mother's Bible and her gray dress and $9 from her baby brother. And she took my note and she put it back in that drawer face down under her handkerchiefs where I found it, sir. I have married a woman. I have been married to a woman. I have lived in this house with a woman whose whole heart was sitting in a dresser drawer with a piece of paper I wrote in 90 seconds at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I did not know. I did not know." Mrs. Green said nothing. She did not need to. He dragged his hand down his face. "The thing I was going to ask you." "Sir?" "Is she well?" "Sir, I do not. I am not asking where. I am not asking which direction. I am not asking whose house. I am asking, as the man who put her on the road, is she well? Does she eat? Does she sleep? Is someone looking after her? That is the whole of my question. Give me that one word, Mrs. Green, and I will never ask again. Yes or no." A long, long silence. Mrs. Green looked at the floor. "She is, sir." His breath went out of him. "Thank you." "Sir." "Thank you, Mrs. Green." "Sir, there is one other thing I have not told you. Not because I was asked to keep it, but because I did not know myself with certainty, and I did not want to carry an untruth to you at a time when you were already bearing what you were bearing. Say it." "Sir." "Mrs. Green, say it." "I believe, sir, I am not a physician, and I did not ask, and she did not tell me in so many words, but I believe, sir, on the night she left, that she was with child." He did not move. For a long second, she thought he had not heard. Then he rose from the desk. He rose slowly, and he walked to the window, and he put both palms flat against the frame, and he leaned his weight against it, and he dropped his head, and he did not make a sound. Mrs. Green waited. She had seen this man at 31 years old close his father's eyes with his own hand in the upstairs bedroom of this house, and she had not seen him weep then. She had seen him at 19 take the news that his mother had gone in the night while he was away at school, and she had not seen him weep then either. She did not see him weep now. But she saw a thing that was worse than weeping, which was a grown man going very still in the presence of a truth he could not unhear, and she understood that a corner had been turned in this library, and there was no turning back from it for him or for any soul in that house. "Mrs. Green," he said at last, and his voice was quiet and rough. "Sir, I am going to ride out tomorrow. Sir, I am going to ride out tomorrow, and I am going to keep riding until I find her, or until my horse gives out, or until I give out, whichever of those three things happens first. I do not know which road to take. I do not expect you to tell me. I only ask that while I am gone, you keep this house as she left it. Her rooms, her dressing table, her things. Do not move them. Do not dust the ring. Do not fold the bed. If I find her and she does not come back, I want her rooms to be exactly as she made them, because that is the only part of her I will have the rest of my life. Yes, sir? And Mrs. Green, sir, if she comes back here before I return, if for any reason she should appear at the door of this house by coach or on foot or in any condition whatsoever, you will not under any circumstance turn her away. You will take her in. You will put her in the best guest room, not her old one, because the old one may be too heavy for her. You will send a boy to the village with word for me. You will feed her. You will warm her. You will guard her as if she were my own blood, because she is carrying it. Are you hearing me? I am hearing you, sir. Swear it. I swear it, sir. On what? On my Tom's grave, sir, and on the memory of your mother. Whichever of the two carries more weight with you tonight. He closed his eyes. They carry equal weight, Mrs. Green. They always have. Yes, sir. Go on now. Will you eat the bread, sir? I will eat the bread. Will you sleep tonight? I will try. Will you take Joseph with you on the road, sir? Not as a servant, as a man. The roads are not what they were in your father's time. You are worth more alive than proud. I will take him. Thank you, sir. He turned from the window. Mrs. Green, sir, I do not deserve her. No, sir, you do not. Will I ever? A silence. And Mrs. Ada Green, 57 years old housekeeper of Boone Hall for 30 of those years, who had raised this boy from a scraped knee at age 9 to the ruin he was standing in at 31, looked at him without flinching, and answered him the way his own mother would have answered him had she been living. That, sir, she said, is not a question for me. That is a question for the woman you find at the end of whatever road you ride tomorrow. And I will tell you this one thing for free, sir, because it is the last thing I will say to you before you go. When you find her, and I believe in my soul that you will, because the Lord does not open a wound this deep in a man and leave him no chance at its mending. When you find her, do not walk up to her like a husband. Walk up to her like a stranger, like a man who has never once had the right to her time. Because that is what you are now, sir. Whatever you were before, you are that now. And only by being a stranger who earns a hearing will you ever have the smallest chance of being her husband again. She bent, picked up the tray, took the old bread, and set down the new. Good night, sir. Good night, Mrs. Green. She left the room. She shut the door behind her. She walked down the long hallway of that great empty house past the closed door of Mrs. Boone's rooms, where a small gold band still lay on a glass tray, exactly where it had been laid 3 weeks before. And outside, across 100 miles of Virginia and Maryland road, 2 lamps were burning that night that did not yet know of each other, one in the window of a small Maryland boarding house, where a judge's name had just been written on a slip of paper, and one in the library of a Virginia estate, where a man had just chosen at last to stop being the master of a house and start being a husband in pursuit of his wife. Judge Elias Winslow was 73 years old, lean as a fence rail, and had a white beard that came nearly to the second button of his waistcoat. He sat in the small study of his own house, with his spectacles pushed high on his forehead, and the folded paper Silas Pritchard had left on Martha Hale's tea table open on the desk before him, and he read it twice through without saying a word. Then he read it a third time. Then he took off the spectacles. Mrs. Hale. Elias. Miss Harper. Sir. You will tell me the whole of it now. Not the half you told me at the door. The whole of it. I cannot help a woman I do not understand, and I have not understood one word since you two walked up my walk this morning. Evelyn looked at Martha Hale. Martha Hale nodded, and Evelyn Harper, for the first time in 24 days, told the whole of her story aloud. The marriage, the house, the long dining table, the storm in April, the note that said, "Only thank you," the hallway, the study door, the word adequate, the word arrangement, the word mistake, the silence that was worse than any of the three. She told it quietly. She did not weep. She told it the way a woman tells a thing she has decided will no longer own her. When she finished, Judge Winslow sat a long time without speaking. Child. Sir, your husband is a fool. Yes, sir. I will tell you 3 things. You listen close. Yes, sir. The first. This note that Mr. Pritchard waved under your nose is not worth the paper it is printed upon. Your father's estate went through probate in the Anne Arundel County Court. I know the clerk who handled it. Any creditor who did not make a claim in that proceeding has forfeited his right under Maryland law to collect from the heirs. I will write to that clerk this afternoon, and I will have a certified copy of the probate docket in my hand by the end of next week, and Mr. Silas Pritchard will learn that he has been carrying a piece of paper with no more legal force than my grocer's list. Evelyn's hands closed hard in her lap. The second. A man who offers a woman's body as settlement of a debt he knows to be sound is committing extortion. A man who offers a woman's body as settlement of a debt he knows to be unsound is committing something the state of Maryland has a prison cell for. I will be writing this evening to the sheriff of this county, who is my nephew, and by Monday next, Mr. Pritchard will have a visit he does not anticipate. Sir, the third, and this Miss Harper is the hard one, so I will say it plain. You are going to have to decide before that baby comes what you want done about the man whose name is on your marriage lines. You have 3 doors in front of you. One is annulment, and it is hard, and it is public, and it will not be kind to you. One is separation under the bed and board, which is quieter, but leaves you tied to his estate in ways you may not wish. And one is to do nothing, and live as Miss Harper, and raise that child as your own, and let him live his life and you yours. You do not have to pick today, but I want you to know the doors, because a woman who does not know her doors walks into walls. She was quiet a long time. Sir. Yes, child. I do not know which door I want. No, you would not yet. You only left the house 3 weeks ago. Give yourself till the child is born. The body knows things the mind has not yet sat down to hear. Yes, sir. He folded his spectacles. He set them on the desk. He looked at her over the top of his white beard with the kind of gentleness old judges sometimes grow into when they have sent enough men to jail and enough men to their graves and enough women home with papers that did not save them. One more thing, Miss Harper. Sir. You came here this morning thinking you were a woman in trouble. Yes, sir. You are not a woman in trouble. You are a woman with a problem. There is a difference, and the difference is going to carry you through the next 40 years if you will let it. She began to cry then quietly. Judge Winslow handed her his own handkerchief, which smelled of tobacco and lavender, and he said nothing at all while she used it. That same evening, Silas Pritchard was in the taproom of the only inn the town possessed, drinking a second glass of rye and writing in a small leather book, when the door opened and a boy of perhaps 12 slipped in and handed him a folded note. He read it. He read it a second time. He paid for his rye, and he left the inn, and before the sun was down, he was in the saddle of his bay horse, riding north out of town at a pace that suggested a man who has just understood in a single written sentence from an elderly country judge that he has misjudged a county. He did not come back. He would 4 days later be arrested in a Pennsylvania tavern on a warrant sworn out by a sheriff in Maryland. He would not trouble Evelyn Harper again. But she did not know that yet. What she knew that night was that she had eaten supper at Martha Hale's kitchen table and said grace without her voice shaking, and May had climbed into her lap and asked her if the baby in her belly was a boy or a girl. And she had said, "I do not know, child." And May had said, "Well, I hope it is a girl, because then I can teach her things." And Evelyn had laughed and laid her cheek on the top of May's head, and thought for the first time since that hallway, I am going to make it. I am actually going to make it. Nathaniel Boone rode north for 11 days. He took Joseph the quiet stableman, as Mrs. Green had instructed. He slept in roadside inns where he did not wash. He asked after a woman traveling alone in every town the mail coach stopped in. He showed no picture because he had none, and he gave no name because she had taken her own back. He described her only as a young woman of 23, slight, dark-haired, blue-eyed, traveling in a gray dress with a Bible. 3 innkeepers thought they might have seen such a woman. None was certain. On the 12th day, he reached the river town where Martha Hale kept her boarding house. He did not know that was where she was. He had come there because the mail route ended there, and because every road out of Virginia his wife might have taken by coach would have ended eventually in this town or in one of its 2 nearest neighbors. He rode up the main street at mid-morning. He did not see her. He dismounted in front of the general store, because a general store was where a man found out what a town knew, and he tied the horse, and he stepped up onto the boards, and he took off his hat before going inside, because his mother had raised him that way, and not even grief had been able to beat it out of him. The door of the general store opened before he reached it. A child of perhaps 7 came out carrying a small paper twist of sugar. Behind her, holding the child's other hand, was a young woman in a plain gray dress. Her hair was pinned back simply. Her face was thinner than he remembered it. One hand rested without her seeming to notice low on the rounded front of her. She looked up. She saw him. She stopped. The child, not understanding, tugged on her hand. Miss Harper, you are squeezing." Evelyn did not answer. Nathaniel Boone took off his hat, though it was already off. He stood in the doorway of the general store with his hat in both hands, and he did not come any closer, and he did not say her name, and he did not say his own name, and he did not say any of the 1,000 sentences he had practiced on the road. He stood there, and he waited, because he had understood one single thing clearly. In 11 days of writing that the next move in this life did not belong to him. It belonged to her. And if she turned around and walked back into that store, he would stand on the boards all afternoon, and he would leave at sundown, and he would never trouble her again. She did not turn around. She did not run to him either. She let go of the child's hand, gently. She said, "May, run home to your mama. Tell her Miss Harper will be along directly. Run now." May looked at the tall man in the doorway. May looked at Evelyn. May, child that she was, felt the thing in the air between them, and she did not argue. She ran. They were alone on the boards. "Evelyn," he said, "do not call me that yet. Forgive me. Do not ask me for that yet either." "Yes, ma'am." A silence. "Why are you here, Mr. Boone?" "To see that you are alive." "You have seen it." "Yes, ma'am." "Then you may go." "I may." "Then go." He did not go. He stood with his hat in his hands, and he looked at her, not at her waist, not at the roundness, but at her face, and only at her face. And after a long moment, he nodded once very slowly. "I will go, Evelyn. I will go today, if that is what you want. I rode 11 days to find out whether you were alive, and you are alive, and I have no right to ask for 1 minute more of your time than that. I only want to say, before I go, one thing. I am not going to ask you to come home. I am not going to ask you for forgiveness. I am not going to ask for the child. That is not why I came. I came because I owed you a sentence I did not say in a hallway 3 weeks ago, and I owe it to you now whether you ever see me again or not." She did not speak. "You were not an arrangement. You were never an arrangement. I am the one who made you feel like one. I am the one who let another woman name you one in my own house. I am the one who heard the word in that room, and did not stand up, and did not strike the table, and did not walk her out the door. I am the one who failed. Not you, not ever you. And whatever you do from this day forward, Evelyn, whether you stay in this town or go to another one, whether you let me stand within 100 miles of you or not, whether you raise that child with my name or without it, you do not carry 1 ounce of that failure. You carry your own name and your own child and your own life. I carry the rest. That is the sentence I rode 11 days to say. I have said it. Good day, ma'am. He put his hat on his head. He turned to go. Mr. Boone? He stopped. He did not turn around. Not at first. He did not trust himself to. Yes, ma'am? Caroline Whitmore. Gone. Out of the house the same day you were. Out of the county within the week. She will not come back. She will not be in any room I am in so long as I have rooms of my own. The house, still standing. Still yours if you ever want it, though. I would understand if you did not. I have also. I did not come to say this, and I do not say it now to persuade you. I have bought a second property, a modest one, on the Maryland side of the line, in case a woman I know should ever want a house that does not have Boone Hall's shadow lying across it. A pause. That was presumptuous. It was. I will sell it if you wish. Do not sell it yet. His shoulders moved, just once, a breath he had been holding. No, ma'am. Mr. Boone. Yes, ma'am. Turn around. He turned around. She was crying now. She had not meant to. She pressed the back of her wrist to her eyes, and she kept it there a moment, and she drew a breath that shook, and she lowered her hand. You will not stay at Martha Hale's boarding house. She does not take male boarders, and I will not ask her to change the custom of 21 years for you. No, ma'am. There is an inn at the end of this street. You will stay there, at your own expense, for as long as I permit you to stay in this town, which may be a day, which may be a week, which I do not yet know. Yes, ma'am. You will not come to Mrs. Hale's door. I will come to the inn at hours I choose, and we will sit in the common room with other people present, and we will speak. About what I do not yet know. But we will speak. Not as husband and wife. As two people who have a thing to settle. Yes, ma'am. You will not touch me. No, ma'am. You will not speak of the child unless I speak of it first. No, ma'am. You will not ask me when I am coming home because I do not know if I am, and the asking will only close a door you have not yet earned the right to have open. No, ma'am. And Mr. Boone. Yes, ma'am. If I ever, in any conversation we have from this day forward, hear you use the word arrangement about this marriage, about any marriage, I will walk out of whatever room you are in, and I will not come back. Am I understood? You are understood, Mrs. Boone. Not yet. Forgive me, Miss Harper. Yes. Miss Harper. That is correct. He stood on the boards with his hat in his hand for a second time in one morning, and he looked at her, and she looked at him, and they were 6 feet apart on the porch of a general store, in a town neither of them had been born in, and they were further from each other than they had been at any dinner table of their marriage, and closer to each other than they had ever been in a single one of its nights. Miss Harper. Yes, Mr. Boone? Thank you. For what? For not walking back into the store? She almost smiled. She did not. But it was a near thing, and they both felt it, and it was more than either of them had had 3 weeks before. He stayed at the inn 19 days. In those 19 days, she came to the common room 11 times. Twice she sat 5 minutes and left. Once she sat an hour and a half. Once she asked him quietly what his mother had been like, because she had realized on the road north that she had been married to him 6 months and had never thought to ask. He answered her for a long time. She listened without interrupting him once. At the end of it, she said, "Thank you, Mr. Boone," and she got up and she went home to Martha Hale's, and she cried in her room for half an hour. Not from sadness, and not quite yet from anything else, but from the strange trembling thing a woman feels when she realizes for the first time that the man she married is a person with a mother and a boyhood and griefs of his own, and that she had never not once in all their marriage been given enough of him to know. He never came to Martha Hale's door. He never asked about the child. On the 19th day, she came to the inn carrying Judge Winslow's folded opinion on the Pritchard note, and she laid it on the table between them, and she said, "There is a man who tried to extort me 3 weeks ago. The judge has had him arrested. I want you to read this so you understand what I was protecting when I told you not to write to my husband." He read it. When he finished, he folded it very carefully, and he handed it back to her, and he said, "Miss Harper, if you will permit me, I would like to leave a sum with Judge Winslow. Not for you. For any woman who comes through his office in the next 10 years with a man like Pritchard at her heels. In your name, not mine, in the name of Miss Evelyn Harper of this county. That is the only use I can think of for Boone money that might be worthy of what you did not take from me." She looked at him. She looked at him a long time. "Yes, Mr. Boone." "Thank you, Miss Harper." Mr. Boone. "Yes, ma'am." "My name is Evelyn." A silence. "Yes, Evelyn." "Not yet your wife, but my name is Evelyn." "Yes." "Good." The child, a boy, came on a cold, clear morning in late January of the following year, in the back bedroom of Martha Hale's boarding house, with Martha at the head of the bed and the midwife at the foot, and May shut out in the hallway crying because she had been told she could not come in. Nathaniel Boone was in the kitchen. He had moved 2 months earlier into a small rented room above the livery stable at the other end of the street, with Evelyn's written permission and no other claim upon her whatsoever. He had chopped Martha Hale's firewood through the winter. He had carried her water buckets. He had learned May's name and 3 of her favorite songs. He had not in any of those weeks crossed the threshold of the boarding house uninvited, nor slept one night under its roof, nor spoken the word wife in any room Evelyn Harper was in. On the morning of the birth, Martha Hale had sent for him at first light. He had come. He had sat at her kitchen table for 11 hours with a cup of coffee going cold in front of him, and his hands clasped so tight his knuckles had gone white. When the cry came, thin, astonished, furious, he put his face in his hands, and he wept for the first time any living soul had ever seen him weep, and he did not care who saw. Martha Hale came down the stairs a long while later. "Mr. Boone? Ma'am?" "She is asking for you." He stood up. He did not trust his legs. "By what name?" Martha Hale looked at him a long, slow moment. "She is asking, sir," she said softly, "for her husband." He climbed those stairs like a man walking into a church. He stopped at the door of the back bedroom. Evelyn was in the bed, pale, exhausted, her hair damp at the temples, a small wrapped bundle on her chest that she was holding with one arm, the way a woman holds a thing that has only just become hers. She looked up when he came in. She did not smile. She did not cry. She held out her free hand to him, not far, not above the blanket, just a few inches, and she said quietly, the way a woman says a thing she has been practicing in her head for 9 months, "Nathaniel, come meet your son." He crossed the room. He knelt beside the bed. He took her hand, and he bent his head over it, and he did not speak for a long time, and she did not ask him to. They were married a second time quietly in the white clapboard church at the end of the street, when the boy was 4 months old. Judge Winslow stood witness. Martha Hale stood witness. May, aged 8.5 by then, carried a bouquet of wild violets and was convinced it was the most important job she had ever been given in her life. There was no dinner afterward. There was no ball. There was no announcement in any Richmond paper. They walked home from the church, the 3 of them with the baby in Evelyn's arms, and they had bread and cold chicken on Martha Hale's kitchen table, and May spilled the milk, and no one scolded her. They did not go back to Boone Hall. The small house on the Maryland side of the line, the one he had bought and never occupied, became theirs. He worked the land. She kept the books. She had 2 more children in the years that followed, both girls, both healthy. Mrs. Ada Green retired from Boone Hall the autumn after the boy was born, came north, and lived with them the remainder of her days in a small room off the kitchen that she always called with a great deal of dignity "my wing of the house." Caroline Whitmore married a wealthy man in Philadelphia. It was not a happy marriage. No one in Virginia ever heard that Evelyn Harper wasted a single thought upon her again. And Nathaniel Boone, who had once called a woman an arrangement and a mistake, and a sufficient wife in a room where she could hear him never again, until the day he was laid down beside her 41 years later in a Maryland churchyard, used any of those 3 words about any living woman on God's earth. Because he had learned in a hallway, in a study on a porch, and on a kitchen chair at Martha Hale's boarding house through 11 hours of a winter morning, the one thing a man of his kind is not born knowing and cannot be taught by any book. A wife is not a solution. A wife is not a title. A wife is not a convenience a man arranges to make his life easier. A wife is a woman, a whole woman, with a name of her own and a heart of her own and a life of her own that was whole before she ever walked through a man's door, and will be whole long after she walks back out again, if he does not earn the keeping of her. Evelyn Harper walked out of Boone Hall in the summer of 1815, with nothing but a gray dress and a Bible and a child no one yet knew about. She walked back into a marriage, a true one, the only one she would ever count, in the summer of the year that followed, on her own feet, in her own time, under her own name, carrying her own son. And she did it because a man had finally understood that the only wedding ring worth wearing is the one a woman chooses, knowing every word her husband has ever spoken about her, in a room where he thought she could not hear. And she wore that ring the rest of her days.